Hello, and welcome to the Gestaltist. In this episode, it's another episode about the Wake Up Warrior program. I shared some information, a little bit of intro to the Wake Up Warrior program in a previous episode. This is all about tips and tricks to succeeding within that program and making it really viable and staying on track. So today I'm going to give you 5 tips and tricks in order to make sure that you stay moving forward in this program. All of these tips and tricks are actually going to be related to the core 4. So there's lots of things in the Wake Up Warrior program that you follow, but I'm really focusing on the core 4 before 8 a.m., the body, being, balance, and business. So I'm going to run through these tips and tricks for you real quick. The first one is meditation. So one of the things that happened was I would go to the gym, so I'd get my workout in, my physical fitness for body in the morning at very early, between like 6 and 7 a.m. usually. And what would happen is I'd leave the gym and I'd come home and I'd sit in my chair in my office and I would then have the intent to meditate, right? I have to get 10 minutes to get my meditation, my half point for meditation every day. And I found that for some reason I would go into reading, I'd go into something else because I just hadn't meditated enough in the past, wasn't used to it, and a lot of times I wouldn't get that half point for my meditation. One of the things I decided to try that really helped for me was to meditate in the sauna at the gym. So I go to LA Fitness. Every one of them has a sauna. So at the end of every workout, I really got to do double duty, right? I got to go into the sauna, which is really helpful for your body and, expelling all of these extra, toxins and all the other things that the sauna does. But also I would go into, a kind of my meditation for 10 minutes. So I'd look at the clock and I wouldn't have any music. I wouldn't have anything else in my ears or anything distracting. I would just sit there and meditate. And so what I found was it was a very easy way to get my meditation in without any distractions and get the extra value of hitting the sauna every day. So once I started doing that, remembering to just go into the sauna, take care of that before I then took a shower, gave me the result that I needed. Ever since then, I've done a really good job at getting my meditation in every day after the workout. Now, if I don't do it, if I don't go work out, at a certain time, or I have to shift my schedule to get my core 4, I have to adapt to that and meditate in another place. But I've really gotten used to doing it in the sauna. So look for ways that you can build in the core 4 into your regimen and what you're already doing so that you can hit that goal. Tip number 2, time management. One thing that I realized that I was doing was I would come back and sit down and I would have to send my messages. So my partner and posterity section where I'm sending a message about what I appreciate, love, enjoy about another person in my household with my boys and my wife. And what I would do is I'd sit there and think for a few minutes and I couldn't come up with something and I'd go on to the next thing. And if I went on to the next thing, normally I got my other points and I wouldn't come back to that. I would get started working and I'd go to work, go to the office, go to meeting, whatever I had, and I wouldn't get that point for the day and wouldn't come back to it. And that's just kind of my fast-paced nature. If it doesn't come to me, then I'm not ready and I move on to the next thing, think I'm going to get back to it, and you don't. Unfortunately, I didn't. So what I found was I would sit down and for that section, I would put 10 minutes on the clock. And I would try to think of something that I love or appreciate about each one of those people. And as they came to me, I would send the message to that person. And throughout that, I had a time clock and I would just sit there and focus on it for that period of time. That also made me slow down enough to where I would then go look at my calendar. So I'd go back through my calendar and I would just mentally think, well, what did we do Tuesday? What did we do Monday, Sunday? And I would just kind of go back through time and see if there was something I missed. Maybe it was something from 2 weeks ago that I never brought up. So putting the clock on and not having to rush and saying I have 10 minutes to really think through this always helped me come up with something instead of moving on to the next piece. Tip number 3, On the same area as posterity and sending those messages, I also put in a backup plan. So if I got to like 8 minutes out of that 10 and I still really hadn't come up with something, usually for an individual person, maybe a lot just hadn't happened in the household in the last few days or whatever it might be, what I would end up doing is having a backup plan where I looked up a quote and I would send them a quote based on them, their personality, something motivating. So that was the backup plan. And at first I was like, well, is this kind of a cop-out? Am I not thinking hard enough? But really, if you follow the program and what Garrett White says in Wake Up Warrior, it's that you spent the time to think about them. So it really falls in line to be able to send that quote or have that backup plan. So that is, the quotes is tip number 3 around getting your messages in on a daily basis. Tip number 4, fuel. This is a big one. So every day you're supposed to start off the day with a green drink. So how do you make that happen? Well, the simplest way to do it is to buy them every Sunday or whenever you go to the grocery store. So I drink Arden's Garden. I found that those seem to be the healthier drinks that I could find that were accessible, ones that I can find that are a little bit lower in sugar. And so I get those, and I'll just go ahead and buy 7 for the week and have an extra. Put those in the fridge. All I have to do is go into my fridge and grab one of those on the go. It also replaces, any other unhealthier meals if you're on the go and you're swinging through, somewhere bad like a fast food joint in the morning. You're replacing it and drinking this in your car on the way to the office, on the way to a meeting. So lots of reasons this green drink's important, but having them all in the fridge is hugely important. Another thing that is kind of a quick tip on this is, sometimes if you're not used to these types of drinks, if you haven't drinking green drinks, you're not into vegetables, there's ways you can kind of wean yourself onto the healthier ones. So what you can do, and what I did was I started with what I would consider the less healthy version. So Arden's Garden are all great drinks. There's lots of brands out there for you to pick from. But what I did was I picked one with more fruit at first, higher sugar content. It is all coming from fruit, but still there's no sugar added, but still a lot of sugar in your diet. And what I did was I got used to that one first, and then I would go find another one that had a little bit less sugar on the label and less, and I kind of just worked into a point where it's like, okay, which one can I most bear that has the least sugar? And then I stop there. And then actually, if I go back to one with sugar, it tastes kind of sweet, especially if you're trying to cut sugar out of your diet more holistically. So you can really wean yourself off, and like in Arden's Garden, you can go from like a Yoga 1 with a lot of pineapple to a green energy machine, and then there's like a third one with a lot lower sugar that, personally I just can't bear quite yet, but trying to work some of that sugar out. So that's tip number 4 for fuel. The last and 5th tip that I have is to get an accountability partner. So every Sunday evening, I have a check-in call with another person that's doing the Warrior program, and we go through what's called the General's Tent. So that's a whole nother section of the book and a whole nother section of the program, but it's a roll-up of what all got completed today. We go through that structure and we hold each other accountable. Now, this isn't really a replacement for being part of the paid monthly program where they put you in a group of 5 other people and you're accountable throughout the week with the 5 other people, but it's a good way to get involved and start to get on the program and see the value that it provides, maybe before joining that program. Or you can skip the accountability tip all completely, join the full program, and then you're going to have that accountability as part of it. So those are my 5 tips I have for you to help you follow the Warrior program. And it's going to be very similar for any other morning regimen that you have. You have to find these tips or these little hacks in order to make sure that you stay on track. I hope this is helpful. Thank you for joining us.